All right, our next guest was actually at that game. We'll get to that in just a moment, and we are honored to have him join us here this morning. The new U.S. ambassador to Canada, David L. Cohen, and we're going to be talking about a number of issues here that he hopes to tackle in partnership with our country. Good morning to you, Ambassador.
Good morning, Melanie. Thanks very much for having you on. And it was really thrilling to be in Hamilton yesterday. It was a great game. It's a wonderful stadium, and even at 50% occupancy, the crowd was really in it. I didn't hear a lot of U.S. fans there, but the Canadian fans were really into the game, and they did a great job rooting their team on.
Absolutely. I want to get your take more on some predictions coming up at the end of this interview, but I want to get your take first on this. Welcome to Toronto. This is your first visit here, and a lot of people are just getting to know you and our relationship, Canada and the U.S., with you. So for those who are watching the protests in Ottawa, I want to get your take on what is happening and how this ties into the United States as well, because we are starting to see a bit of a divided nation here, north of the border, as well south of the border. So how do we make the two come together?
So first of all, it is great to be in Canada. This is where I wanted to come. I wanted to come here because of the strength of the relationship between the United States and Canada, strong relationship for trade. We share common values. There's strong relationship in terms of our common defense and national security. We have a mutual commitment to diversity, equity and inclusion. And we have a long history of working together and of being not only great allies, but great friends. When I look at the demonstrations in Ottawa, I'm struck by the fact that I think they represent good news and bad news. The good news is that Canada, like the US, is a country where our population has free speech rights, the ability to exercise their opinions, to speak out when they agree or disagree with what the government is doing. And there is clearly some disagreement around vaccine mandates and around the government's handling of the pandemic. The bad news, though, is, and this is not for all the demonstrators, but there is a minority of the demonstrators that is taking the platform of this legitimate demonstration and using it to espouse hate speech and to speak out inappropriately, desecrating national monuments, carrying Nazi flags and waving Nazi flags. And look, this is the price of a democracy. I do want to applaud the Ottawa police, who I think have done a fantastic job in dealing with this large influx of truckers, not losing their cool and not provoking violent response. The demonstrations have been almost exclusively peaceful, even if parts of them have contained speech that I'd rather not see. But that is the price of living in a country where we prize the ability of our population to speak freely.
Yes, and you've mentioned a number of things here. I want to talk about the pandemic. The last couple of years, indeed, have been challenging and trying for a number of people, industries, both for Canada and for the United States. It looks as though, signs are pointing to we are going to get to a better place soon. The partnership between Canada and the U.S., how will that work together? Obviously, we look to Pfizer for vaccines and whatnot, and we are short in rapid tests. What is that partnership looking like to help us together, both Canada and the U.S., to get out of this?
So, look, the pandemic is the overriding issue that is confronting the world, but certainly including the United States and Canada as we tackle the rest of the issues in the roadmap for continued partnership between Canada and the United States that President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau announced last February. We have to bring the pandemic under control. And I think it's ironic that we seem to be on our way to doing that. You announced at the top of this show the lessening of restrictions starting today in the province. And I think we'll and I think we'll see some lessening of restrictions. Dealing with a public health crisis, and it is a crisis like the pandemic, is a matter of choices and balancing pros and cons of the actions you take. I would note, by the way, that if it was not for the heavy and high rate of vaccinations in Canada and the United States, we would not be in a position where we'd be loosening pandemic-related restrictions in restaurants and gyms and other facilities in Canada and in the United States. Vaccines work. If they don't block the disease, they at least minimize the severity of the disease. And as we find that out, we can strike a different balance between, for example, opening schools and having all virtual instruction, with the understanding being that there may be some COVID cases that result because we've opened schools, but they're likely to be more mild. And because of vaccines, they're not likely to be as many as they would otherwise be. So I think Canada and the United States share an approach to dealing with the pandemic. I think our positions have largely been aligned, and I think that will continue to be the case.
There is a lot more to discuss with you, but unfortunately, we have run out of time with you today. No doubt these discussions will continue in your years to come as a new ambassador to Canada. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me on, and I'm always open to an invitation to return. I appreciate the airtime. Thanks.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much. And, unfortunately, there are a lot of topics that we didn't get a chance to tackle here. We will have him back. We promise we'll have him back, and we'll talk about some things, some key issues like trade that he definitely highlighted there. House of Commons back in session as well today, so more to come.